Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Satsang. Let's make some silence first. Once again, good morning all. Welcome to Satsang. Just reminding everyone that we use WhatsApp as a means of communication. You can send your questions directly to me. The number appears on the comments. So when life is completely devoted to liberation, to the quest for truth, it brings a lot of frustration many times because you know that you're not being able to move forward and answers are not always easy. The level of frustration that makes you question life itself. But this is difficult to achieve. It's for those who their hearts are really burning with a desire for liberation. Even the most hardened seekers still have a lot of difficulties in avoiding the life of the character, the purposes of the character, the immediate quest for acceptance, love, self-worth, and all these worldly undertakings. So when you have many of these investments going on at the same time, it is more difficult for you to face that frustration that I was talking about. Because, well, there's many things there for the character. It's quite common for seekers to see their lives go by, and despite what they call many changes, many progress, there's no liberation. That's not there. And that was the goal. And as they move closer to the end of that physical life, they tend to have this more close vision, and like an inner conversation goes on. And they say, oh, I've gone through everything there is, monastic life, done this type of meditation, that type of meditation, went to this philosophy, that philosophy, travel all around the world, and nothing. And there's always a new hope in the horizon, because this is how life moves on. And this is very common, very common. And there's a very good reason for this to be this way. And the reason is simple. It is a journey of the character. So one of the most important fundamental aspects of the quest for liberation has not been understood. This is crucial, crucial. Because as it is a journey of the character, you are moving towards the character's goals. The character is making the decisions, is choosing, is doing all these things. And even if the master is found, or by the eyes of the character, someone that can help me is found, and the character is accepting what the master is saying, and then applying it because it has accepted. This also cannot go too far because the main aspect was not understood. And that main aspect is surrender. Surrender is the core of all spiritual teachings. It all comes down to that surrender. So into the case of that one that has made many changes in his life, has given up everything to be close to the master and is paying attention and all of this, well, there's a vision, a common vision, that the master is someone there that is helping you to reach liberation. But it is correct, but not in the way that it is seen. The master is there to remove you out of the equation. And when you're removed out of the equation, liberation is what is left. But as you are sitting in a chair of control, even if by giving it, you are still the master. And as you are the master, there's no room for real surrender. There's no room for sacrifices. It's an investment. And this cannot bear fruit. And it doesn't matter if your ideas are good or bad, if your concepts are more aligned with truth or not. They are just concepts. And they don't replace, neither they facilitate liberation. So 5,000 plus years, there was a jewel given to all seekers throughout the ages. That was Bhagavad Gita. And that was a very perfect illustration of this central teaching. This point where all teachings convey to. So Krishna was driving the chariot. I'm sure everybody has listened to this. I'll repeat it a little bit more. It won't kill anyone. And this example, as it is explained that the chariot represents the body-mind, the horse is the senses, and la la la. But Krishna was driving. It was not Arjuna that was driving. So when the seeker is in control and is listening to what the master is saying, that means Arjuna is driving the chariot and is picking up the directions. And then he is choosing, okay, I will go to the direction that Krishna is saying, or I will not go. It doesn't matter if it is agreeing or disagreeing, it's the same. Because you're sitting in the control, you are making the decisions. So when Krishna is driving the chariot, he is making the choices, not you. You are just dealing with what comes from those choices, what Krishna is laying in front of you. And that is possible only because you already have surrendered that. And this is a very big principle. And then what unfolds also is very revealing. Because there's this idea that, okay, so the master is saying go left. I can see that from going left. It makes sense even if I don't understand. It can make sense even if I don't see, so okay, I will go. you're in the chariot, you're in the seat of the driver. And what is behind your decisions? Not the master's decisions. It is yours that are standing in the way. And what is behind that is your ignorance, your greed, your fears, your what you expect to gain as a prophet. So this, all of this is what stands in the way, for the better or for the worse. So it's completely different. But not only giving once and for all that control, sitting Krishna in the chariot and letting him drive, but also not trying to regain that control back. Because, okay, so now Krishna is driving and the same things are there, the same fears, and when he's turning left and you see, oh, I might gain something from this, so we can take advantage of this, but there will be times in which it will be visible there's nothing for me to gain. There's only losses, humiliation, difficulties. And this is where those who can reach this level usually regain the control back, because they really never give it. So surrender is the central piece, and it's also that which is more difficult to achieve. Because whatever motivations are there, they will be revealed. There's this sense that, oh, the master is here to help me. Yes. But the meaning you have for this is that it is here to help you according to what you think is right, what you think you need, to the best outcome in your limited vision of what the best outcome is. And that usually concerns the character, the story of the character, and its best outcome. In the master's vision, the best outcome is liberation, is your disappearance. So it doesn't matter if there is humiliation for the character, whatever helps getting it out of the way, whatever helps breaking wrong motivations, stripping illusions, wrong concepts, it's good outcome, worthwhile. As you are in control, as Krishna, God, Guru, is not in full control of the chariot, driving it. And that means you are following like an extension, like your hand follows your mind, the direction of your mind. If you're not doing this, then you are still the master. And you're looking at the master, at God, at Guru, as just a means to an end. Oh, I'll be a nice disciple, I'll be very shanti, and I will do whatever I imagine that it is expected out of me, as long as, and with intents in mind, with future, a lot of plannings ahead. And if it's not for a prosperous future, it is for survival. It doesn't matter one or the other. They are both enough to keep you entertained. So this is why, in a real process of liberation, in a real relationship, difficult tests appear, difficult situations, and they are all opportunities, real opportunities. Very different from what you imagine to be an opportunity. But not everyone can surrender. A seeker that is weak cannot surrender. Only the seeker that has regained his strength back can surrender. Because if it is weak, it says, oh, I'm just weak, just take care of me. It has nothing to surrender. What is he surrendering? In his mind, being weak is a tool. Because no one's weak. Some reject their strength because by appearing to be weak, they can get what they think they need in a very easy way, apparently, but because in practical terms, that really never works like that. But different seekers entertain different levels of illusion. Just different mechanics, but in the end, everything is the same. And especially these days, as in these times that we are going through, intellect is very developed, and that is good. But like everything, it has pros and cons. And one of the challenges is liberation, is surrender. That is a big challenge because greed has become more prominent and sacrifices tend to be looked at as investments, and so they don't bear the fruits that they should. And this is a story for many, many countless souls that move around and around, always renewing the hope of finding liberation, of finding the path. And as this hope gets renewed, the necessary alignments get postponed. You see, frustration opens beautiful doors for a seeker of truth, of course, because for a seeker of well-being, it just makes him look somewhere else. It opens other doors, but those are always open. But for the seeker of truth, it opens good doors. But being exposed to frustration is not easy because it's not a fast episode. It's a long and painful one. But without it, control is kept. And, well, spiritual teachings, the good ones, the ancient ones, they spoke about impurities, they spoke about all these things because they are there and they are obstacles. Of course, these days the mantra is, you just have to do this. But if this was like this, then liberated beings would be the majority and not blind ones. So something must be not really accurate in that equation. But look no further. Look no further. You are, you always have been, the obstacle, the main obstacle, that which stops you from reaching what your heart really desires. And as long as you're in that position, making decisions, complying because you want to, in case that you're in a relationship, you have a master and he is giving you directions. Because that interaction, in a sense, is for you to see what you need to see, to trust, and eventually to surrender. That's the goal. But you see the master as a handyman. For example, you want to take a shower and there's something wrong with the plumbing. You try to solve it, but you're not being able to solve it. But you want to take your bath in that temperature, in that way. So you call a handyman for him to fix your problem so that you can enjoy. But that's not the master. The master is the hot bath that you want to take. He is not the handyman. And he is there to drive the chariot. Not because he's going to take the chariot to somewhere that you don't know how to reach. He could give you the directions, and this is what you imagine that it's happening. By him driving your chariot, you're out of the equation. And the most important has been achieved. It doesn't matter. It's look, time is not what you imagine, because you imagine that you have all the time in the world, especially in the beginning of a new episode, which is another incarnation, whatever that means. But as you soon find out, you look back and so many years have passed and they don't seem to be in the same proportion of the concept of time you have. It goes by very quickly. And that is your biggest treasure. Surrender has to be tested to make it pure, clean. And clean means free from motivations coming from the character, from motivations that guarantee the character's future. Clean from that. So it's quite common for seekers to question the directions that they receive because they want to understand so that they are able to comply, or not if it is too much for them. And they don't see that this process maintains the obstacles. So in the beginning, yes, you should question, you should be sure. But being sure is not at the level of the mind. Your heart knows if that is the master or not. Then this conversation unfolds. But okay, a little bit of this conversation is healthy. But eventually, there's no point in continuing that relationship. You have to make all the questions you need to make to assess what you need to assess, and then it is to work on surrender. Because if these conversations continue, it doesn't matter, because circumstances are coming to take you out of the way. And as you are questioning and trying to understand, you are trying to maintain control so it will not bear fruit like it should. So another circumstance has to come, another one has to come, another one has to come. And eventually, you won't be able to understand. You're not supposed to. You're not supposed to understand. And then if you're not understanding, you may even comply because of your hopes, of the character's hopes. So I hope I don't understand, but I hope this will bring something good. This is for a good reason. You're still sitting in the chair of power. You're complying and not questioning because you have hopes and expectations. And what will cure that then? Frustration of those hopes. Instead of the sweet that you're hoping, bitter will come in its place. So it will tackle that emptiness which is there even in a stronger way. And then as you hold to the temptation of regaining that control, eventually you'll get rid of those motivations. Eventually. So the quest for liberation appears to be a long journey, because in the absence of the right conditions, maturity from your part, of course, it takes time to bring you to simplicity, to the right alignment. And it takes time because majority of times it doesn't even fit in your world. It doesn't. So you trust on intuitions. Intuitions can only come inside of your world, concerning your world. They cannot come outside of that scope. So they are bettered from what you have. But concerning liberation, this is light years away from it. The master is that one that enters your world and has the potential of ripping your world for you to put your head a little bit beyond that, beyond your limited horizons. And this is light years ahead. So what stands in the middle of surrender is the absence of purity, the absence of freedom from these aspirations of that character. Attachments to the character's story, to the character's future. And that's for all, in one way or another. And you have many things that can accelerate that cleaning. And many undertake these techniques to accelerate it because they have a sharp intellect, they understand. But still, the biggest impurity is the perception, the apparent existence of this character. And if he is the one driving the car, oh, he is cleaning itself, but he's still there. He's still there at the helm, controlling. Like a filter, everything goes through him. So giving up, detachment, all of these things, every single teaching is preparing you for surrender. And as you align with that intent, then it is an intense journey, but not long, not long. What takes time is to begin the journey in the right alignment. That is what takes time. Because there's a lot of things at stake. Of course, you want a brighter future for the character. And you will stand in the way, trying to make sure of that. But that is the obstacle, one of the main obstacles for liberation. This is why spiritual meditation techniques or whatever, they are important, like the seeds are important to plant the soil. But the soil is much more important. Much more important. And we see society moving in a direction, shaping the human intellect in opposite ways. Battling for individual rights, the rights of the individual. It's like being programmed to defend that which is the obstacle. And this is guaranteeing the biggest right, which is to be miserable. Because with that mindset, and that, my friend, your experience is confirming that. But again, everything is conditioned to interpretation. And assessing what is here now is very difficult. It's better to strive on hope. And hope is something that makes you waste a lot of precious time. It helps for one part, but it's an obstacle in the other part. Because things that would reveal you that it's not through here, you're still hoping. So remember this, all spiritual teachings, they speak about surrender. And the more of that, the more close you can come to that, the more real the journey will become. So in a serious process, Tests are intense and they come faster and faster. That is the preferable, because you don't have time to adapt. Because if somehow you achieve that level of trust by your intellect, it will be more difficult to break the present structures. Because it's like, okay, I've given the wheel because I know you will take me where I want to go. But the meaning of this is not still aligned with liberation, just appears to be. So remember, the time you're not using for your liberation, you are using it for your bondage. Remember this sentence. Every moment of your day, because every moment counts. The time you're not using towards your liberation, you're using to secure your bondage. God, Guru, guidance is not a means to an end, is the end in itself. I will answer your question now. Hello, especially after retreats or intense spiritual practices, especially. Immense sexual desire arises. I don't want to waste this spiritual energy, yet don't know how to handle with it because it's still here. Thank you. Well, depending if it's at some levels, there's a difference if it is a man or a woman, but at other levels is more or less the same. You see, intense spiritual practices, they tend to take you a little bit or a lot depending on the intensity of them. Let's call it, they move you a little bit from your world because you become more light, more clean. So your perception changes, your reality, your vibration. And as you come out of it, the part of you that doesn't want it, that doesn't want liberation, that just wants to be as it is, as there were intense spiritual practices, there was no room for it. As it reduces, so the room for it appears, and it takes this space. It can come from many reasons. I will speak about a few. Then you see, if you can, which or one or more, they can be more. So as you were working on and feeding the part of you that wants liberation, the other part got hungry and needs food, needs to regain the vibration lost. So he'll go for it, in a sense, to regain that which was lost. So sexual intercourse, let's put aside the energetic part for now, but there's the part of where you receive affection and even this pleasure. This was the word, affection and pleasure, fast pleasure. So this can come in the field of uh, other ways, like food, for example, eating more sweets, the need for sweets. So these things come intensely, especially after a retreat. This is why I usually say life is a retreat. Because if you create a space for it, then you open up a space for the opposite of it. And then you're going 2 steps forward, 2 steps backward. Energetically, as you are in intense practice, your energy will increase. And if you're not wasting your sexual energy, it will increase also. And through intense spiritual practices, as the nadis, the energetic channels get cleaner and cleaner, this energy has the ability to move upwards. But if this isn't happening and that energy doesn't have anywhere to go, then it wants to be purged out. Of course, the body gets a thrill about this because a lot of hormones and all those things that you already know. And it gets relieved because you go to that known peace. So eventually, if it can be avoided, good. If it cannot, well, make it as constructive as possible. There's no perfect way to handle things. And you can only do what's possible, but aspiring for the best. And there's many other aspects connected to sexual energy, which I will not go into now. There's no point for it. But in this context that you're bringing here, of not wasting, there are some things that can help you. Some, how do you say? Some habits with your food that you can change, reducing salt, for example, sugar, and low diet. This, coupled with intense spiritual practices, makes a lot of a difference. Even when people are just dieting, fast, eating less for losing weight, for example, if they lower enough of it, a lot of it, or too much in a worldly perspective, of course, the sexual part will diminish. It's a way of the body protecting itself. But as you couple fasting with intense spiritual practices, and with a different outlook, that may bring different results. But eventually, everything has its own time. We could say, okay, so make those intense retreats more longer periods, less periods without. But even this has a limit. and you have to conquer it at your own pace. So eventually you will slip, but that's not the bigger problem. Keep an eye on the ball of where you want to reach. And this way, eventually, by persisting, by sacrificing, you will not do it immediately, but you will succeed. The main issue, not the main issue, it's just from a perspective because, well, things are not in the same way that it is imagined. This wasting of energy and what comes with them sometimes, depending if you're doing that alone or if you're doing that with someone else, and who is that someone else? What is that someone else giving to you? Because in that exchange, you get the best out of that one and you get the worst out of that one also. And again, big subject, no needed. So what you need to do is observe what you can change in terms of your diet. That will help. Continue your efforts, continue the direction that you're taking, and try to avoid it the best you can. But if eventually it has to happen, don't succumb to guilt. Because if there's something that needs to be rectified, okay, good. But guilt is one of the greatest poisons of the mind. Don't succumb to this. Sometimes guilt is needed because it opens doors to real growth. But for many and many times, the guilt is just the sought at end result of investments. Because even if you look at human life and your dreams as a means to reach the highest realization, at a worldly perspective, it is just to find suffering. And guilt is one of those big fruits. And there are many, 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 many seekers addicted to guilt. Whatever they invest as a dream, what they're really looking to take out from things is guilt. And that closes the cycle. Then hope will come again, and they continue just looking for that aspect of suffering. As you are able to increase those intensive periods of spiritual practice, that will help. Or even maybe what you call intense is not as intense as it could be. Maybe your practice needs to go to another level, and that will speed the way, the thing, in the sense that you can cross over, because it's like let's call it vibrational realities. And these are in different stages. So as you're trying to move from one level of vibration to another, it's like you hit a wall that brings a lot of suffering and pain and tells you to quit. This is the security systems of the vibration level that you're in. But if you're able to go through that, you will reach the next highest vibrational state, and everything changes in the next one. And in the next one, again, everything changes. And if you fall down, what had disappeared comes back, like it has always been there. reaching the highest level. That is not the point. The point is, as you are exposed to these different stages of vibration, something very deep inside of you will start losing its trust in what is presented as reality, because you have experienced a lot of different things, and if they keep on changing, they are not real. So more and more you'll be free from being impressed. But that will only make sense in that context of surrender. So I don't know if you want to know any more specifics about this. If you can make it more specific, then I can speak in a more specific way. Vou responder à tua pergunta. So this is in Portuguese, I will translate. Keeping a daily disciplined practice as a routine for the quest for truth. But that routine is very rigid and imposed. So the phrases come to my mind. I have to, or if I don't, or when I do, as a feeling of fear, guilt, remorse. Many times I feel I haven't done enough. I find myself divided because when I'm meditating, I'm feeling guilty for not being working. And when I'm working, I feel guilty for not being in the quest. During practice, as so when I sleep, I get scared as if I'm falling. Many times my state of mind is anxious and obsessive, of the kind something is missing that I have to do. But even so, I keep up the meditation routine. My friend, well, if you have a calling, if you have a spiritual calling, it is your higher self that wants that, not the circumstantial character. The circumstantial character is there as a fruit of circumstances, and as a fruit of those circumstances, it has plans of its own. Besides that, nobody is going after you. And the quest for truth is for those who have the calling, those who really want it. So there are those that go to the gym lifting weights and they just want to improve a little bit, feeling a little bit better. And they have, well, they give themselves to a very mild effort with very little discipline. Those who want to reach the highest of bodybuilding and making that of a career, they go to a very intense routine, very disciplined routine, very difficult routine for the majority of other people. This is a worldly undertaking, follows the same rules than a spiritual undertaking. And this is about how much do you want it? It's not like something is being imposed. You embrace it according to your thirst. If the thirst is not there, how will you embrace it? But for everyone is the same. You have the spiritual character, the one that seeks liberation. It is a character still, but this calling that disturbs and drags you. This is from your higher self. So it's a little bit more distant, but still it is there. It is felt. This lower self, this circumstantial self, is more close. So identification is bigger. But either way, as you are embracing the goals of the worldly character, and that means using your time for them, the parts of you that wants liberation will suffer. Will feel discomfort, will feel frustration, will feel even guilt. And when you are embracing those investments, turning your back to because you cannot do the same. You cannot do both at the same time. Sometimes it appears to be, but they are not different. They are the same. They are just worldly. So when you are embracing and giving time to your spiritual investments, worldly character will suffer also. So suffering is guaranteed for everybody because that is the fruit of illusion. But there's the suffering that opens the path of liberation, and the suffering that just maintains illusion, deepens it. So in your description, I found nothing about a calling, but probably it's because you don't know that terminology. Probably, not surely. But of course, as the worldly character is in control, he will find spiritual disciplines difficult, exaggerated, and all of that. But as a bodybuilder or as someone else in sports or in politics or in a CEO, for example, in all levels, people that reach the highest or aspire for the highest, they tend to apply more time in a more stricted way. That is common. And they do it because they want it to. And they see that the present circumstances are not helping. What you're describing here is a conflict between these two aspects, these two possibilities. But I'm not reading anything about this calling. So it is all in the hands of the character. You're in control. Probably you're just, at this moment, it can be something different, but at this moment, it is probably more about taking guilt from both than to actually move into any direction. So both are taking at the same time, you're getting frustration in both ends, and probably this is closing the cycle. So as it doesn't become fully spiritual, it is still practically all worldly. One part of you will suffer. So if you choose one, embrace one, and take it to the end, the other will suffer. If you do the other way around, the other one will suffer. If you're picking up both, you're doing none, and the spiritual one will suffer. It is like this. But if the calling is there, then it's not about, is it rigid or not? Is it this or that? It's not about that. It's about making a decision or not, because no one will be after you demanding that you do this or that. Simple. It's like if the hunger is there, nobody is forcing you to eat. If you eat, you will get eventually satisfied. If you don't eat, well, so that depends on which hunger is strongest and which one is more suitable for you. But at this moment, it's probably more about the guilt, the feeling bad with yourself, than about anything else. And even if the calling is there, this inner conflict is being used this way, connected to low self-esteem, of course, and many other factors, which I will not talk about here, unless you ask me to. Okay, coming back to the previous questioner, thank you so much. Just wanted to add that there is, since very early age, there was an immense desire for orgasm here, which has not been fulfilled. I'm not sure if that is fulfillable, because when you reach to a certain point, yeah, for sure, there must be a higher one, whatever that means. Also, there was a hunger, which I somehow know that does not belong to me. As an example, I had some out-of-body experiences before, as if I will leave the body, but that hunger was immensely arise, and as if I choose to come back to world, to body to fulfill it, but never fulfilled it. I'm a woman, but that hunger was men's hunger towards women. Strange a bit. Yes, that was a little bit strange. And the fact that English is not my main language, it doesn't help much. But okay, I'll read it again. Okay, I will focus in one main aspect here, which it jumps as the most important, because I have seen this, heard this many times, and it comes with this connotation, and I'll give it to you as a reflection for you. You see, despite of all the work you have done, this worldly character develops in the present circumstances. And that means even if there's something there that it's not really aligned to the work you've done previously, it can be there, it can flourish. And there are many aspects of this, and depending in the way that you enter spirituality. And these days, it starts more as despite the calling, despite the previous experiences and all of that. It goes a lot through mental concepts. And it reaches a point where there's a need to where you build a spiritual image of yourself, the one you want to believe and you want to give others. And some of the ways to reconcile the quest for truth or the quest for spirituality, as many say, because quest for truth is a more direct term, less broadening. There is also a need to reconcile existing urges, needs with the spiritual teachings, with what is known. So sometimes people say, oh, I will not, I don't want to go to an ashram to have a life of a monk, for example, because in previous lives I was a monk. Then I had to be born again to satisfy this desire or that desire. And many, if not all the time, this is being used as a way to maintain both things, the quest, but not hot, just warm, or cold, depending on your level of honesty, but not hot, just warm or cold. and to keep doing all the things but prioritizing this worldly needs. Desires never get fulfilled, and they are all circumstantial. They are fun, they are nice, yes, of course, when you are not looking for liberation, when you're not perceiving them as an obstacle to liberation, then they're fun. When this is perceived, they are not so fun. But before that, yes, they are fun. And then ending back in suffering brings back the opportunity of experiences heights again. It's fun in a way. So if you have return, it means you weren't able to burn all the sanskars connected to that. So if you're trying to burn those sanskars by creating more sanskars, it will not work in that direction. And you have to be very careful because your mind will paint the image that better suits it. It will find ways of putting both things at the same time in the same place. But it doesn't matter how smart you are, it will not work. So you will have to continue to deceive yourself. So it's unimportant where it has come from and why. It's unimportant. The important part, it's there and it has to be solved. I think I've understood this. I'm a woman, but that hunger was a man's hunger. I think I understood this towards women. Yes. But that's also has to do a lot with the cultural view of women these days. You are being directed to a man's mind, and this reflects in at every level. But you have different needs. So well, I'm not going to enter that question. That is too much noise. But well, it's implied. Where has it come from? Why is it there? Unimportant. It's like asking, but if I was everything, if I was a spiritual being, a soul, what am I doing here? It doesn't matter. What matters is these are the present conditions, circumstances of your illusion. And your direction is to move out from them. As you're trying to understand them, you are just justifying them, giving them reality. And this only emboldens them. So careful. If you want to use spiritual teachings to understand what is there, use them in the right way. As for example, if these desires are here and they compel me here to exercise them, then that means that my previous efforts in this direction were not that successful. So I have to complete the task here now. And all these investments, they are connected to low self-esteem, to the need to affirm oneself, to seek value, sometimes to hurt oneself. And these are all worldly aspirations, parts of the worldly theoretical play, just to keep the show on the road, nothing else. Okay. If you have any other questions or you want to speak a little bit more about one specific aspect, then, well, you can send your question. And in some way, we have ended very distant from where we began, but all of these things, all teachings, whatever work you're doing, if it's not ending in humility and then and subsequent surrender, it's not going in the right direction yet, because everything ends in surrender and everything begins with surrender. The real journey begins with surrender and it ends with it. The wrong journey ends with it. And you may be going through the same circumstances and it will give some fruit if surrender is not there. If surrender is there, those same circumstances, same practices, same teachings, same things, if surrender is there, it will bring fruits. Teachings have been tested long before the start of this episode of yours. So it's not the problem of the seeds. It is the land which is not, which has to be tended, made proper. Okay. So for today, that's it. Next satsang will be Saturday, 9:30 in the morning, Brazilian time, UTC -3. Until then, make the best use of your time. Make it real for you. No. They were reminding me about the retreats, but no point speaking about it. Everything is available here on Instagram. I will only mention the next date, but I already did last week. It was posted, so I will talk about the other one of the next month. Okay. Touch.